Welcome back. Another edition of Talking Ball. We've got the college basketball show going on Mondays, like we always will. And we had a lot of great college basketball exhibition action. Very thankful that a lot of these games were not secret scrimmages, but there were certainly some secret scrimmages going on. But we got some big ones. Certainly Friday. Made a short video about that. You guys can check that one out. But Friday we had Purdue, Kentucky. We had Kansas, Louisville, and we had BYU, North Carolina. We also had some other matchups throughout the weekend. Arkansas played Cincinnati. We had Duke and Tennessee. There's a lot of exhibitions. Virginia, Villanova. So I think it'll be fun to go through, the AP poll and look at some of these teams, how they did compared to how they're ranked.
This is great that the NCAA allowed this to occur through a rule change and that you could schedule exhibition games against top opponents. And I think it's really exciting. Uh, no secret that we would watch Duke, Tennessee last night, but it was like a regular season game. They were both playing to win and very exciting to see how they played. So let's take it away, Jack. What do you see? Who are the teams that are rising? Who are the teams that are falling? And what do you see?
Have to start when you talk about rising teams with Kentucky. What they did, I mean, they were missing two starters, Jalen Lowe and Jaden Quaintance, who I'm not really sure when they're going to come back. Um, and they played the number one team in the country according to the preseason poll, which we all know how much that's really worth, but that's what we got to go off of, right? So and Purdue really struggled to get anything going offensively against them. Now Kentucky's offense wasn't necessarily spectacular, but their defense sure was, and they played a lot of guys. Um, and they just had a lot of different contributors. But the thing I think that gave Purdue a lot of trouble was the positional size of Kentucky, and I think some of that helped without Jalen Lowe being available, who's a 6'1", 6'2" guard, and instead they started two 6'4" and 6'5" guards, and that made a big difference on Braden Smith, who had a little bit less passing angles to work with. Now I would imagine Jalen Lowe would cover somebody else, but um, with that being said, it was a complete effort defensively from the Wildcats and something that they can use to build on moving forward.
So, how much does preseason polls matter? We know not much, but in prep for tonight's show, I found the New York Times poll, which they keep track of the top 25, that was just done this morning. It was like, or seven, it said 7 hours ago. So maybe about, noon. And how much did the game that you watched, he jumped Kentucky to number 2.
Yeah.
And he took Purdue down to number 8 as a result of that.
Flipped them.
And the new number 1 from the New York Times, Michigan.
Wow.
He's saying that they're two bigs, Addie something and Moses Johnson or something, that they're two. All right, thank you. But they're two bigs, reminded him of UConn's use of their bigs when they won back-to-back championships. And so he just took them and leapfrogged everybody. And so his number 1 is Michigan, number 2, Kentucky.
Okay, that is interesting. I think those two bigs are good. My concern for Michigan has been, will they have enough shooting to surround them? And in that game against St. John's, they did shoot 8 of 19 from 3. So that's good enough. That's going to get it done. Now, it's not necessarily a super high volume, but their bigs are good. I think Michigan, they played the game against, who did they dropped a game earlier, maybe in Cincinnati, but they didn't have Morez Johnson Jr. and Adai Mara. So
Thank you.
you're around
No,
there. You're
they're not. I'm not even in uh, re. I'm in exhibition
yeah,
in
well,
terms of
maybe.
my
That's like training
pronunciation.
camp.
Hey,
Training
look,
camp.
I knew that there were two bigs.
Well, you did
That
read
was
the
about it.
article. Yeah. Yeah.
But that Michigan in the AP and in the coaches poll was number 7.
Yes.
And so they brought him all the way up to number 1 in the New York Times poll.
Okay. I want to go back to Kentucky Purdue. I wasn't quite done there because, as you just said, there was a riser, Kentucky, but there was also a faller in Purdue. And there was two things um, coming into the season that I was a little bit concerned with Purdue. Number one was going back to playing with two bigs. They're going back to they brought in Oscar Clough, who averaged 12 rebounds a game, um, and they're going to try to play two bigs like they did with Edey. But Oscar Clough is not Zach Edey. I mean, very few people are, but in that Kentucky game, he really did not have an impact. And the other thing for Purdue, athletically, they seem to be at a disadvantage more so than usual. They're usually at an athletic disadvantage. I think losing Camden Heide and Miles Colvin, who were two of their better athletes, certainly Heide, um, was bigger loss for them than I think I myself and a lot of the national media gave credit to for Purdue, because it seemed like athletically they were a step behind as a team, and those were two of their better athletes last year. So that is something I'm going to be paying attention to as the season unfolds. And I think in Big Ten basketball they'll be okay, but against when they play some of these upper tier teams who are really big and athletic, there aren't too many teams like Kentucky. So I think for the most part they'll be okay. But it is something to keep in mind as we get deeper into the season and we start thinking about March Madness picks. So let's go to that Michigan St. John's. I think those would be two other teams. You mentioned Michigan as a riser. St. John's, I think, they've had two now. They lost in overtime to Michigan, so I don't think it's like the sky's falling. It could have gone either way, clearly. But one of my concerns for them coming into the season was their guards. They brought in guards who could shoot, but I was worried that they couldn't defend. And none of the three of them, looking at the box score, two of them, Osiah Sellers and Josan Sandin, couldn't stay on the court because they were in foul trouble. At least Sandin scored 14 points in 14 minutes, but they both had 5 fouls. And Ian Jackson didn't give them very much. Now, the front court for St. John's has been very good, and I think that will continue. But they're going to need their backcourt to play better. And considering those three guys were the biggest names, the guy who played the most minutes in their backcourt was Dylan Darling, which I think says a lot about where those guys are at right now.
Well, the what would you call it? Was it a preseason exhibition when we watched St. John's?
That's an exhibition. Against Towson, they did not look good. They played
Oh,
much better against Michigan, clearly.
absolutely. So the New York Times, which is the only one that's the reason I'm referring to it, is the only one that I found quickly that updated it. So St. John's was in the AP 25 5, in the coaches poll 6, and even after both games, they New York Times only had them at 7, so they really didn't punish them at all. I'm more intrigued by the fact that the AP poll had Duke at 6, coaches had him at 5, and the New York Times has him at 9. And after watching last night's game, he obviously made some adjustments and he moved them up slightly to 9. They were not as highly ranked before. And his biggest concern for Duke, obviously, is the guard play, which we've raised in our other show many times. But St. John's, and then the most consistent still, because have they played a scrimmage, UConn?
Yes, but
And
they
what
were
they look
missing.
like?
Not great, to be honest. They played Boston College, who is I think picked in bottom 2 teams in the ACC. Now, I know it was a pretty close game. Now, UConn was missing 3 rotation players, so similar to Michigan when they lost to Cincinnati, you can't read too much into that based off the amount of guys they're missing. I think it, but at the same time, it didn't give me like this is a top 5 team vibe, because even if you're missing a couple of guys, you should go out there and beat a team like Boston College, I would say, and feel pretty good about it.
All 3 polls have UConn at number 4, and that would be UConn after the game you're talking about. So little surprising that they remained
I
that high. But little look, the one thing for certain that is a consistent among all the teams right now is that if you're going to bring in your recruits from high school, you're going to get players through the portal. You're going to have some international players. We saw in the Duke game last night, a player at Barcelona for Duke who's played his first college game. So even though he's a recruit, it was his first college game. So that that's Dami Sarr, right?
correct.
And the returning players, 4 different groups, how do they mesh together? And there's just no way to know that until you're getting into league play, really. You might get glimpses and exhibitions in early season matchups, but the meshing it's something that was very obvious on Tennessee's part last night.
Yeah. So I think Duke looks good. I think their ranking is probably justified. Um, I think Arkansas. I think Arkansas's got a real chance to be one of the top teams in the SEC. I was very high on Darius Acuff coming into the season. He looked good. Carter Knox had a really good close. The younger brother to Kevin Knox had a really good close to last year's season, and he looks good this year. But the thing that has me moving them up as a stock riser is I wasn't sure, I hadn't got a chance to watch Malik Thomas in high school, but everything that I'd read about him was he had a reputation as a big-time scorer. And in their first game against Cincinnati, I know it's an exhibition, it doesn't count, but he had 18 points and 3 3-pointers and 7 rebounds for a 6'4", 6'5", maybe guard. They are going to be good. That's going to be a really good team with those 2 guards, Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff, and I think they're going to give a lot of teams in the SEC some problems this season.
One thing I like is that there are 3 teams in the top 25 from the ACC, since we're, obviously major Duke fans. Louisville is 11, 10, and 11 if you want to include the New York Times poll, which is just an incredible tribute to the coach turning that whole program around. And in AP, North Carolina is 25. In the coaches poll, North Carolina is 25. And for what it's worth, the New York Times has them at 20. So at least we go into the season and there are some in-conference games that will matter a lot for Duke this year.
Yes. The ACC, as the college basketball point of the show, the ACC does look to be better this year. And Louisville did not have a great showing against Kansas, and Sananda Frew, I think, he didn't look great, but Ali Khalifa did. And if Cason Pryor can give them minutes at the 5, I think they'll be all right. North Carolina I didn't come away from that game thinking they've improved a ton on one of their weaknesses last year with their shooting, but I do think they're a much bigger team now, and they'll, as a result, be a much better defensive team because of Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar. They're going to be difficult to score on inside, and that's going to make them a better team this season. And then NC State and Virginia, two teams that aren't in the top 25 but got votes, I think will have moments this season where they are in the top 25. NC State, a lot of people are high on them. Some of their freshmen, like Matt Abel, I think a lot of people are high on him. Haven't had a chance to watch him yet. And then there's a buzz with Paul McNeil. They've got Darian Williams, who is the preseason ACC Player of the Year. And they've got a bunch of transfers coming in. Will Wade's a very confident coach. I think he's going to inject some life into that program. And then Virginia, they've got a lot of veteran. They've got two veteran bigs in Grunlow and DeRitter. They won an exhibition against Villanova, which is certainly a team that's rebuilding right now, but better. So it's hard to say how much to take from that. But I think the overall thing I've taken away from watching these exhibitions is the importance of depth. And that's coming from what we saw last year, especially the two teams in the finals who were playing 10 guys. And I've seen a lot of teams playing 10, 11 guys in college basketball in these exhibitions. How much of that is because it's an exhibition versus a real game, we'll have to find out. But I think that's going to be something I'm going to be monitoring, are a lot more teams going to go deeper into their bench.
Did you have a chance to see Arizona?
I watched a little bit of Arizona.
Okay, so Arizona, AP had him at 13. Coaches poll had him at 13. And the New York Times, based on their scrimmages, moved them up ahead of St. John's at number 6. And the reason being 2 5-star recruits that they got.
They've got Koa Pete and Braden Burries. Good players. Burries, I can shoot it. My concern with them is their shooting. When we did our preseason podcast, I was talking about their shooting. Like Koa Pete can shoot mid-range shots, but he's not a three-point shooter. And their bigs, like Krivas, isn't a three-point shooter. So it sounds funny, but in the modern basketball, when neither of your bigs can shoot the three, it does hurt your spacing. With that being said, though, coming into this year, Jaden Bradley was part of the equation there in terms of I didn't think he wasn't a high-volume shooter in the past. But what I've seen in the scrimmages, in these exhibitions, he's been taking and making more threes. And that gives me more confidence for the spacing for Arizona, and will make them a better team. And Anthony Delorso quickly looks like a different person. He's got a beard. He looks like he's put on some muscle. He's playing a little bit more inside. I think that's a good sign. He's far and away their best shooter.
Any other, risers or fallers that you want to break? Go ahead.
I got one big one. They got 7 votes in the AP poll. They're outside. I think it's just a matter of time before this team is ranked. Washington. Washington, I think, is supremely underrated. I think in large part they weren't very good last year. They're all the way out there in Seattle or just adjacent to Seattle, somewhere out there. So, there is an East Coast bias, certainly, with college basketball. They're not getting the love. That team, they didn't have everybody. They're also playing against UNLV, who's not going to be a top 25 team. But, boy, their ball movement is really good. They brought in a lot of talent. And 2 guys I want to point out to pay attention to. Number 1, Hannes Steinbach, who is part of, I think the power forward position in college basketball this year is going to be maybe the best position in college basketball when you consider Steinbach, Cameron Boozer, David Mirkovic. There's just a lot of these big 6'9", 6'10", 250-pound forwards who can do everything. Shoot, pass, rebound, defend. And Steinbach is certainly one of those guys. And then their point guard, J.J. Mandikit, is a table setter. He was like number 50, number 60. He was DeBonsa's point guard in high school. He's not going to be a one-and-done guy, but he is a guy who can run your offense right now and make you a better team. He had 12 assists in that exhibition game against UNLV. A really good player.
Good team to watch then, Washington. So let me ask you one other thing before we wrap up our quick Monday show on. So you love to follow the recruits and see who's the best incoming player. And so you were keeping tabs on the scores of 3 players in particular. And I think it's kind of fun to do that because the second part of my question is going to be, do any of them rise to the level of the potential player of the year that will this become a real horse race?
I mean, off the top of my head, Braden Smith is the only upperclassman that I see in contention with those 3 guys for the award. They are going to be like, for anybody who doesn't know, I should address that. It's Darren Peterson with Kansas, AJ DeBonsa with BYU, and Cameron Boozer with Duke. And they're the consensus top 3 players. They are most likely going to be the first 3 picks in the 2026 NBA draft. In what order, we don't know. As of now, it's not clear. As of now, I would say it would just depend on who's picking and what they need. Do they need a guard? Do they need a forward? Do they need a wing? Right? Because there's not a large degree of separation. But those 3 guys had outstanding debuts. I know they don't count, but they count, as far as scouting is concerned. And each of them not only lived up to the billing, but exceeded, the expectations coming in. And we'll see. Can they continue to do that? It's a long season. And can they continue to be, as productive as they have been so far? And for DeBonsa and Boozer quickly, they've played 2 games. They were able to do it again in the second game, especially Boozer. We'll see if Peterson can keep up with them and have another excellent performance.
And to your point about its exhibition, it doesn't count yet. There were 25 NBA scouts from 25 different teams at the Tennessee Duke game yesterday. I mean, the real question was, who didn't come? Is it that they just don't have a number? They're not going to be in the lottery no matter what. But this counts. These exhibition games for the scouts, and so that's all I need to know.
That's right. So we didn't do this 20 minutes ago. Should have done it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Drop your comments. Like this video. It really helps. We'll be putting out clips, on TikTok and Instagram. I'll be doing my best tweeting away. We're doing this show every Monday. I'll be dropping in other college basketball videos throughout the week. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, guys. Peace.